Hello and welcome to another installment of the Hockey Talk podcast. I'm Matthew Harding. This week's guest played 973 National Hockey League games over 17 seasons with the Phoenix Coyotes, Buffalo Sabres, Philadelphia Flyers, Montreal Canadiens, and Colorado Avalanche. He finished just shy of 700 career points and was a two-time National Hockey League All-Star. Known as a clutch playoff performer throughout his career, he posted 30 points in 23 games during the 2010 Stanley Cup playoffs and averaged just under a point per game in his NHL playoff career, which spanned 124 games. After a lengthy career in pro hockey, he retired from the game in 2015, setting himself up for a budding career off the ice as an executive. Currently, he is the Vice President of Operations for the Maine Mariners. We're joined this week by NHL great Daniel Briere. Pleasure to be joined by the Vice President of Operations for the Maine Mariners. He is a former NHL great, Daniel Briere. Mr. Briere, thanks very much for talking with me again. It has been 3 years since we've done this. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really well. Thank you very much. I guess I should say as well as can be in this crisis that we're all in.
Yeah. First question here is, how are you doing? How's the family? And are you finding ways to work through the stay-at-home orders that we've been having here over the last couple of months?
I'm learning. I guess like everybody else, I'm learning how to make it work from home. It's a little different, but we have to adapt. You have to find ways to make it work. I'm fortunate to be working for a great organization that gives us the chance to do that. And no, it's funny because I see the both sides with the NHL involved with the Flyers on the business side, and then with the Mariners as well. And with the NHL, it's tough because we don't know what's going on. We don't know where we're going to be in a month, and 2 months, and 3 months from now. But we have to prepare as if hockey might come back and we might finish the season and do the playoffs. But we don't know yet for sure. At the ECHL level, it's a little easier in the sense that we have moved on and we're getting ready for next season. There's no closure, not the one we wanted. But it's a little easier to prepare, knowing that we're not waiting to see if there's going to be the playoffs or not.
From a business aspect, which do you prefer? Do you prefer that finite, okay, we're done here, let's move on, or do you prescribe to the, well, let's wait and see what happens theory that it seems like the NHL has been playing with here for the last several weeks?
Well, as a competitor, as a fan of the game, I want to wait and see if we can somehow salvage part of the season and see some, because we're missing the best time of hockey. The springtime with the playoffs. It's my favorite time of the year. So we're missing that right now. So I'm willing to wait and hope for the best. But if I only think on the business side, it does make things much easier, the fact that we can concentrate on getting ready for next season.
How, from the player aspect, this is interesting because you played in the lockout shortened season a few years back. Do you find, or maybe you've heard of this from some other players who you played with, are they treating it like a lockout shortened season, or how would you go about treating your body like that?
Yeah, well, it's tough because most guys are stuck at home. They cannot do much else at this point. Nobody is supposed to have use of the rink to see if they can practice or skate. Most of them are not allowed to go to the gym. So you try to take your body, from what I'm hearing from the guys, is you try to take care of yourself as much as possible. Eating maybe a little better than you usually do. Trying to be, thinking way ahead as far as training, finding ways to do new things that usually you have in a gym. So it's you have to be creative at this point. I think everybody understands that we're in a special situation. But I know the guys can't wait to have a little bit more structure.
Do you feel like that the NHL will make a comeback here in the next 2 to 3 months?
Well, it sounds like they really want to. I don't know for sure. I'd be lying if I knew for sure what's going on.
Sure.
But it really sounds from everywhere that we're hearing is that they really want to get the season in. They want to get the playoffs in, even if it means having to push back the regular season starting next year.
So then let's shift that over to the ECHL, and let's say that the NHL decides that they want to go ahead and go forward with this, and we finish up the NHL season around September and then have a 2-month layoff, and then the NHL and American Hockey League in theory would come back in December. Are you in favor then of the ECHL coming back and opening up in December with that timeline because of the fact that you will have more developed players and potentially more Ranger draft picks and things like that in your lineup?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of things to discuss when it comes to that, because we have our schedule already. Every team has received their schedule. We're making a few adjustments, but we are planning to open in December like we have in the past. But at the same time, we realize that we're a development league. We rely on NHL teams and AHL teams especially for their players, and we do need their help. So it might make sense to push back our season, but at this point, we haven't discussed it. We're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with the NHL, with the AHL, and then we'll probably come to a decision after that.
Speaking with Danny Briere, the Vice President of Operations for the Maine Mariners, kind of a lighthearted question here as we briefly get off the COVID stuff. What's the first thing you're planning to do after the lockdown is lifted?
Well, I can't wait to hang out with people. Can't wait to see people. I don't know if it's going to be a birthday somewhere, a date at the restaurant, but just to come out, see a few different people. I think that's what we're all looking forward to.
I guess while we're on the subject, and I said that this was the final question, but I'll stay on that subject since it's the most pressing. Obviously, we're not going to be able, I don't think, to go back into arenas where we have 10,000 people, 5,000 people, or even 3,000 people right away. How do you feel like, from the spectator angle, that the sport of that the ECHL will change from this?
That's a good question. It might be a little too early to get a perfect read on that. I think initially, social distancing will still be something we'll have to live through. I don't know. Early on, it sounds like the NHL is willing to come back and have some games played in front of empty buildings. I'm not so sure that'll be the case for the ECHL, but we'll probably have some restrictions as far as the amount of fans early on that we can have. And so it's going to be interesting to see how we adapt. But one thing you can tell is people are craving some kind of excitement, some kind of sporting event. And you saw that just a couple weeks ago when the NFL had their amateur draft, how many people flocked to it and were watching it. So I think it'll be a big relief for the communities when sports start going on again, and we'll try to do our best to make sure everybody is safe, the players, the staff, and especially the fans.
And in doing so with the players, a lot of bus travel and things like that. How will you guys work with the Rangers, local health departments, the ECHL to ensure that the players who play in that league, play on that team, and are riding the bus are indeed safe?
Well, like you mentioned, we'll follow the guidelines that are suggested by health people, health organization, by the Flyers, the Rangers in our case, who we're affiliated with. So we'll do our best to not put our players at risk, our staff at risk. But what I'm mostly worried about is the fans. because you don't know where they've been. You can't control who they've been around, and who you bring together in a big environment like that inside an arena. So that's mostly what I'm worried about at this point.
Throughout this situation, we find strength through ways that we never really thought we had it. Have you had a little bit of time where you've taken some introspective look at yourself and thought, I didn't really think I had that level of strength in this role, and if so, what is it?
Well, I kind of look at the world in general. You can tell early on it was stuff everybody buying in, but when it got serious, I was really amazed how people came together and wanted to beat this thing. That's probably what I'm mostly amazed with. How many people are looking for solution at this point, and hopefully we'll find one that will work for everybody, not just in our region or in the United States, but in the whole world.
I promise that was the last question on COVID. So thanks for going through the gauntlet on that one. Let's shift to your role with the Mariners now as vice president of operations. When we spoke 3 years ago, you had just taken the position, and a lot of legwork still had to be done. I don't even believe that at the time we talked that the Mariners even had a name yet. So. Walk us through what that growth in the job has been like for Danny Briere.
Well, I believe me, I've learned a lot. It's been 3 years now involved with the team, and it feels like every day I'm learning something new, and that's what's really amazing. The hockey side has been a lot of fun dealing with our staff there, starting with Riley Armstrong, our head coach. It's been a lot of fun building the team and watching games and seeing the team improve. On the business side, it's been a lot more of a challenge, but something that got me, a little pushed me in my uncomfortable zone. But that's what I like, that challenge of pushing myself and learning something new every day has been a lot of fun.
You mentioned that it was a challenge. Can you expand a little bit on that? Is it with the fans coming back into the arena after the American Hockey League? It is a step down, after all, from the American Hockey League to the ECHL. Can you expand on what some of those challenges have been?
Well, on the hockey side, I've been really impressed with how good of a hockey league it is, how good the players are, how committed they are. That to me was a big eye opener. How these guys want to achieve their dream of playing the NHL, and they're willing to do anything for it. Obviously, we know they're not making a lot of money playing the ECHL. They play for the love of the game and because they want to keep chasing their dreams. So that's been amazing to deal with these athletes that want to push themselves. Where it's been personally a little bit more challenging is on the business side, overseeing, the financials of the team, the different departments when it comes to learning about ticket sales and marketing, and group sales, corporate sales. So, combining all of that and understanding all of that was, like I said, a challenge at first, but something that I'm getting more and more comfortable with. But that's what's been a lot of fun learning, how all those departments come together, because as a player, you just assume you show up at the rink and you assume that things just happen. You hire a few people to direct traffic, the ushers, and then you hire some people to sell popcorn and soft drinks. And, the refs show up and the game starts. But I've learned that there's a lot more going into it and how many people it takes to make it all work. That was a huge eye-opener as well for myself.
Is it something, you mentioned that it was a huge eye-opener, is it something that took you by surprise initially? There are so many people who have to work to make this show go on.
Yeah, totally. I didn't realize. Obviously at the NHL level, there's 12 or 15 times the amount of staff that we have at the ECHL level. But it's amazing how many people it takes to put up the show and to get everybody in place and everything in place for the games to happen. At the ECHL level, your staff is a lot smaller. Everybody has to wear 4, 5, 6 different hats. Lots of work is being done, but it's the best way to learn.
Do you feel like you've started to hit your stride in the position that you're in?
Well, I feel a lot better, a lot more confident, a lot more comfortable. But the great part is I'm still learning. I'm still learning new things on a daily basis, and that's what I love about this job. But at the same time, I feel more comfortable. And like everybody else, when you're in the minors, you want to climb up the ranks, and you hope that one day it will lead you to a job, hopefully at the NHL level at some point in the future.
How important has Paul Holmgren been to your development in this role?
Well, Paul has been a great mentor, and it started even when I was a player. Him and I had a great relationship. Obviously, he believed in me from the get-go, giving me an amazing contract. And for myself, I believed in what he was building with the Flyers. Chasing a Stanley Cup. And then when I retired, he was the first one to call and invite me to follow in his footsteps. At that time, he was now president of the Flyers. So he invited me to follow what he was doing, how it worked, spend time with the different departments. And about 1.5 to 2 years later, that's when the organization bought an ECHL franchise and moved them to Portland, Maine. And they offered me the job to learn. So I'm still involved on the business side with the Flyers, and I get to apply what I'm learning with the Flyers. I get to apply with the Mariners in the ECHL. So as far as the situation goes, it couldn't be much better. But it all started because Paul believed in me.
On the ice, the Mariners were finding some success, and at the time of the stoppage, we're making a real push for the playoffs. We had Michael Keeley on for our trade deadline show and talking about the Mariners, and head coach Riley Armstrong had done a really good job developing a good group of players.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that is just the tip of the iceberg of what Coach Armstrong can do up there with the Mariners organization?
I certainly hope so, and that's the sad part is for our fans, for our players, for our staff, seeing all the work they had put in. The team was just hitting their stride. We were feeling better and better. It was going to be our first time in the playoffs. We were really excited about that. So that's where I feel bad. I feel sad for everybody that's put in so much work for it to see it end this way. But we're not the only one. There's a lot of people in the same situation. It's tough when you realize that some of the players might never play, not just for the Mariners, but in the NHL, in the American League, elsewhere in different leagues, that this might have been the end of the road for them to end like that. It's sad, it's depressing. But hopefully we can get back on track next year with the Mariners, give the fans the playoffs that we missed this year and get back to where we were. Riley has done a tremendous job as far as his development for himself and the way he's developed his players. I've been really, really impressed with him, and I expect him to climb up the ranks as well. And I believe one day I'll be back in the NHL as a coach.
It certainly doesn't hurt that you guys have a great relationship with the New York Rangers and the Hartford Wolfpack and their general manager, who's a former teammate of yours, in Chris Drury.
Yes, definitely, and that's been a lot of fun dealing with Chris on different subjects, but mostly with players, player development. It's been interesting. It's been fun, but I think it goes both ways. The trust is building between the two organizations. More and more, they trust us with their players. They trust Riley and his development skills. Most of their players, when they're it's time to call them back up to Hartford, they were able to provide them with good games, good play. So that all the credit goes to our coaching staff for that.
Have you been in contact since the stoppage with Coach Armstrong, and how is he approaching putting together a group for next year? Obviously now with probably a month or more of a head start, the same with everybody else, but he would have been coaching potentially into early part of the month of May with the playoffs. So how's he doing with that process?
Yeah, I mean we're in talks 2 or 3 times daily. So we're trying to prepare for next year, trying to recruit, trying to assess where which players will be back, who wants to play, depending on their contract. So yeah, on a daily basis, we look at our chart and we try to locate different players and come up with plans and structure for next season. So that's already in the works. Like you mentioned, we have a head start. We might not even start on time. We might have some extra time to get ready. Hopefully not too long if it does. But yeah, the wheels are in motion already, like I said earlier, to prepare the team for next year. That's on the hockey side, but the same goes for the business side. We're trying to build a structure around our schedule that's going to come out soon. Trying to reach out to our fans as much as possible to see if there's anything we can do and we can help with, and hopefully to have them back and see them back in our building, early next season.
Has he given you any kind of indication from the players that he may have talked to, or from the agents that he's talked to, of whether players who were born in the United States and went overseas to play, whether they would come back over and play because of a potential second wave again, or is that something that players really at this time of the year aren't thinking about? They're just trying to line up a job for next year.
Yeah, we haven't had to deal with any players or agent that has told us, no, I don't want to play hockey next year. I want to wait and see, what's going to happen with this pandemic. So far, everybody is looking forward to getting back into training, to getting back onto the ice and training camp for next season and see what happens. So we haven't had to deal with anyone at this point, and that can change as we get closer to the season. But at this point, we haven't dealt with any of that.
As a player, and I know that this is a really unique circumstance, but as a player, would you have been more apt to stay closer to home and play in a spot where you're familiar with versus going overseas with something like this and going far away from home, knowing that there's a chance you can't get back over? I
think everybody is in a different situation. I had kids very, very young, so that might have been my answer might have been different when they were young than when they were older. I think the case is different for everybody. I'm not too sure. It'd be very tough to say. But one thing that I know is just knowing how competitive I was, knowing how competitive all the hockey players are, because you don't get to play pro hockey without being competitive. I have the feeling that most of these guys can't wait to get back on the ice, and they'll do anything that they can to get back to a sense of normal as much as possible.
Vice President of Operations for the Maine Mariners, Daniel Briere, joining us on this edition of the Hockey Talk podcast. Want to go from your career in the front office, which is still budding, to a really good career on the ice with multiple different teams. You broke in to the NHL with the Phoenix Coyotes back in 1997-98 after a really stellar career up in the Quebec Major Junior League. Can you tell us what that experience like of being in there with the big boys, the Shane Doans of the world, for somebody like you as highly touted as you were coming out of the QMJHL? What was that experience like for you?
Well, it was pretty wild. Coming out of juniors, realizing your dream of, getting to the NHL. My road wasn't as straight line or as easy as probably most people expect. it took me a while to have a steady job at the NHL. I was up and down for 3.5 years between the American League and the NHL, trying to learn and develop my pro game. But I still remember my first training camps when you're around guys like Jeremy Roenick and Keith Tkachuk. Teppo Newman and Dave Manson was still there, and I could go on and on. It was very impressive early on, and partly maybe what kind of slowed my growth is being in such awe of these players early on might have played tricks on me. So it took me a while to get used to it, to really believe that I belong there. Looking back, that's probably one of the things I would change if I got to go to my first NHL training camp again today.
But being in that spot, did you feel like at the time, and looking back on it now, did you feel like it was almost natural for you to be in awe of those guys because you saw what they had on the ice and what they had done on the ice? Surely that had to come naturally for you. I had been watching hockey on TV, so those were the guys that I was watching on TV. So it was weird thinking that it was my time now. I belong with them. But it was pretty wild. It was amazing that finally it was my turn and I was there. Trying to compose with all the distraction was, just part of the process, part of your development that early on maybe I didn't do quite as good of a job as I would be able to do nowadays. You mentioned that you went up and down between the American Hockey League and the NHL for about 3.5 years. Take us to that final training camp where you broke in 2001, 2002. What were you told at the end of that 2001 season that made you stick on a roster at the beginning of the 01-02 season?
Well, I think that's the year that I even cleared waivers early on when everybody was healthy, it took a while. In talking with my agents, we were wondering where would be the best place, and looking at all the rosters, that's where with the Coyotes, there's definitely a need down the middle. They were a little thin up front. So I thought this would be a good spot for me. So we decided to, not ask for a trade and keep going there. I was able to make the team out of training camp, but then 3 weeks into the season, they put me through waivers. I went to the minors for a little bit and came back. And from that point on, things kind of, started evolving. I started feeling a lot more confident, started realizing that I belong there. And then that was a good feeling. From that point on, I never looked back, and I knew I belonged in the NHL.
Was it something in your game that changed, or just a buildup of confidence through time?
I think it was mostly mentally that I improved. I was in a much better place. Early on, I made some mistakes. Off the ice, just not being prepared well enough. And as you mature, as you get older, you know yourself a little better. I worked with a sports psychologist that helped me mentally approaching the different situation. Being better prepared really helped me when it was time, when things were on the line, and that was part of the turnaround in my career right around that time as well.
How important is it? You obviously there's you and there's Riley Armstrong. Both of you guys have played it at the highest level of the game. How important is it for you guys to impact these players and let them know that even now everybody's watching you, and they're watching how you're taking care of your body, they're watching how you're mentally checked into games and things like that? How do you impart that wisdom on players to this day?
Yeah. Well, that's what we tell the players, right? You're trying to better yourself. You stay after practice, you stay in the gym, you take care of your body, you stay on the ice to do more stuff. Well, the same goes for your nutrition. the same goes for your sleeping habits. So those are all things that could help you move on and move up to the next level. Sometimes it's tough for the younger guys to understand, but usually they come around. They can understand and appreciate the difference when they start trying those things. But most of these guys, like I said earlier, they want to play in the NHL, and they're willing to do anything to help them achieve their dreams.
You had 30 points in 23 games, with 12 of those points coming in the 2010 Stanley Cup final. Given the atmosphere of the playoffs, did you realize at all that you were on a heater at that time? Or take us through what that felt like for you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you've heard a lot of athletes talk about how when they're in the zone, and that's how it felt right at the time. I wasn't thinking about anything else. I wasn't thinking about how many points I was having. I was just thinking about winning the next game. You know, I felt good. I felt confident. I felt going into every game that I was the best player on the ice. And that's a great feeling to have as well, when you're lining up and you feel like you're going to score a goal at any time and at any given time in a game. That's how it felt during those playoffs, and it was certainly some of my best hockey in my career. But yeah, mentally it was amazing to feel that way going into every game.
You know, the Stanley Cup that night was skated on Philadelphia ice. Did you just come back out after the handshakes had gone off and you'd gone back into the room and changed out of your uniform? Did you come back out to watch any of that and just realize how close you got, or did that ultimately, being that close, give you fuel for the next few years?
No, I didn't come back on to watch. I was in the room. I remember it was a pretty empty feeling. And one other thing that's really weird is, for 2 months, you have, people at your feet doing anything to help you off the ice. You have reporters everywhere you go. There's no time. You have team meetings. There's always something going on. The only time you get to relax is when you sleep. And all of a sudden it ends and everything stops. And it was weird. It was an empty feeling. I remember getting undressed and just going to see. I had a lot of friends and family members at the game. And I just remember going back out. Nobody knew what to say. We were just standing around, kind of looking at each other. So it was a tough time. But yeah, you try to learn from that. I remember the following year we had a very similar team, and I thought we were going to make another run. Unfortunately, we got hit by a lot of injuries, and it didn't happen. But that's what you try to do. You try to put in the past, try to learn from it, and hope that you get another shot at it.
You've played for some really influential coaches: Patrick Waugh, Lindy Ruff, Peter Laviolette. Who is your favorite to play for? And you can go back to the queue on this one. Who's your favorite coach to play for, and who is the most influential?
Well, that's a really good question, and you've mentioned some great names there, and they were all amazing in their own way. I mean, Lindy commanded respect. He believed in us. He let us play. We had a very, very young team, and he was excellent with the young guys. He's the one that believed in me when not a lot of people did. So I have a lot of respect for Lindy. Peter was an amazing motivator. Peter Laviolette came in to Philly and was able to turn our team around. There was a lot of expectation. He was very good with veteran players. Peter was very, very creative offensively as well. He's one of the few coaches that was very creative that way. Most coaches they'll teach you a lot of defense, but when it comes to the offense, they'll let you do whatever you're able to do creatively. Where Peter would come in and teach us offense and what he wanted to see and give us some repairs on the ice. So that was very exciting. Patrick Roy, I have a lot of respect for as well. Talking about someone who's very close to his players, who's very emotional. You could feel that as a player, he cared about you. He cared about what was going on, and he was always there to try to protect you. If you go back to Patrick's first game as a head coach, you can see that how his emotion in trying to protect his players took over. So those are all great coaches that I was very fortunate to have during my path throughout the NHL.
Was it fun for you to play in Montreal, being a guy from Quebec and coming back home? What was that experience like? And I know you played one more year with Colorado, but did you feel like by playing in Montreal that your career had come full circle?
Yeah, I would. The way I look at it is I feel I was very fortunate to have a second chance at it. Everybody knows that in 2007 I chose to come to the Flyers rather than Montreal. And I don't regret that decision. That was a great decision. I had a great time in Philadelphia, and I still call it home. But Montreal was my favorite team growing up. It was really tough to turn my back on that organization. I feel very fortunate 6 years later when I had a second chance at free agency that Montreal was still there trying to acquire my rights. And I felt that time I couldn't pass it up again. Having a chance to experience what it's like to play in Montreal, there's nothing like it as a player. You play on a Monday night. The atmosphere in the building is the same as playing a Saturday night in the playoffs. In Montreal, it was like a playoff game every single night. It was really wild. It was pretty cool playing so close to my friends and family that way as well. And it's something that nobody can take away from me. The fact that I wore that Montreal Canadiens jersey for a full season, even got to play 3 rounds of the playoffs. Just a couple wins away from the Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens that year in 2015. And I still believe if Carey Price doesn't get hurt in the third round, we have a chance to play in the Stanley Cup final. So it was an amazing experience to play in front of those fans.
Is Carey Price's run in those playoffs that year the best you've seen a goaltender play in the playoffs?
I don't know if it's the best we've ever seen, but one thing I can tell you is that year alone, I never felt that we were the best team on the ice, but we always had the best player behind us. And he was definitely hiding a lot of shortcomings on our team. He gave us a chance to win every single night. And when that confidence built, when you know you have the best player on the ice, protecting your net, it goes a long way. And that's why I say, that year in the playoffs, if Carey stays healthy, who knows what might happen.
Spending our final few moments with Daniel Briere, former NHL great, here on the Hockey Talk podcast. Couple of quick questions here before we let you go. Which fan base deserves the Stanley Cup more, Buffalo or Philadelphia?
Wow, that's a tough question there. And they're both amazing fan base. And what's amazing with both of them is how loyal they are to their team. We saw what happened in Buffalo for so many years, never having won a Stanley Cup yet. And the fans are just as excited when their team performs and plays well, and they're there to support. I had the chance to be there for a few playoff runs, and it was amazing. Now, when you look at the Flyers, everybody knows the fans in Philadelphia, how emotional they are and how passionate they are. The year that I joined them, the year before, they sold almost at capacity, and the team was last in the NHL. So it just shows you how committed they are to the Flyers. I've also had the chance to go through a few playoffs run with them, and they were there just as much as the Buffalo fans were. So I can't pick between the two. They're definitely two fan base that deserves a Stanley Cup soon.
And finally, I'm a huge Jerome McNutt fan, so this is a selfish question, a kind of a guilty pleasure question on my part, but give me your favorite Jerome McNutt story.
My favorite Jerome McNutt story. Well, I was very fortunate to share a locker with him in Colorado my last year. Jerome and I sat between each other, so I was able to pick his brains on a lot of things. And we talk about someone who's a great gentleman, off the ice, amazing player. But what's impressed me even more is how he carries himself off the ice. I was really, really impressed with him, and that stays a long, long time with you when you see a great player handle himself that way. But a funny story is when I was 17 years old, I was chosen to represent Canada at the under-18 Canadian team. And before you got the training camp, you had to reach out to another player on the team and ask him a few questions so you can present them to the rest of the team when we all met a few weeks later. So they called me, and I barely spoke English at the time, and they told me, said, okay, your job is to call Jerome McNutt and ask him a few questions, and you're going to present them to the team in a couple weeks when we meet up in Calgary, I believe. And I had no idea who Jerome McNutt was. I didn't even know he was a hockey player in juniors at the time, so a little embarrassed to say that today. But, it was quite the eye-opener in looking at what he was able to accomplish in his career. I feel ashamed that I didn't know who he was at the time. But it's a pretty funny story, and I did the best that I could in trying to understand him when I barely spoke English. And, after that, since then, we've been friends for since that time.
I'm sure that he has never let you live that down. I'm almost sure of it.
He still has he has some funny stories about that. I'm sure if you ask him, he'd be able to recall that.
Well, yeah. Well, I got to say, you're one of the gentlemen of the game as well, and it is good to see that you have had as much success in the front office with the Maine Mariners and the Philadelphia Flyers as you have on the ice. Hopefully one day, very soon, you'll get your hands on a Kelly Cup championship up there in Maine.
That'd be great.
It is our pleasure to speak with you again. Thanks very much for doing this, and be well.
Thank you very much, Matt. Same to you. Take care.
Our thanks to Media Relations and Broadcast Manager for the Mariners, Michael Keeley, for his help in setting up the interview, to Daniel Briere for joining us, and to you for listening and your support of the Sin Bin. We'll be back with another episode of the Hockey Talk podcast very soon.